Did you say loosey-goosey? That does it, kid. You have just earned yourself a serious butt-kicking.
The worst cartoon fighters. Alright folks, grab your popcorn, because today we're talking about some of the most hopeless, laughable cartoon fighters ever to throw a punch. Or at least try. You know, not everyone in the world of animation is a superhero, and sometimes it's just sad to see a character try to fight when they clearly should have just stayed home. It's like watching a cat try to swim. Cute, but ultimately a complete disaster. We're diving headfirst into the absolute worst of the worst. The fighters who couldn't even take on a toddler, let alone a supervillain. I'm talking about the cartoon characters who swing and miss so hard they end up fighting their own dignity more than their enemies. These are the wannabe tough guys who should have just stuck to solving mysteries, running errands, or, frankly, just taking a nap. Stick around to the end, and I promise we'll reveal the biggest joke of a fighter to ever grace Saturday morning cartoons. Drop a comment if you've ever watched a cartoon fight scene that was so cringe you wanted to crawl under your couch. And don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss more of these hilarious deep dives into cartoon madness. First up, we have the king of avoiding confrontation, Shaggy Rogers. If you've ever seen a Scooby-Doo episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Shaggy is that guy in every group who thinks he's ready for action until it actually comes to throwing down. The man's best move is literally just screaming while running in the opposite direction. Honestly, if running away counted as martial arts, Shaggy would have a black belt by now. Let's break this down for a moment. You've got a gang full of teenagers solving mysteries. Fred with his traps, Daphne somehow always getting kidnapped, but managing to help eventually. Velma piecing it all together with her genius. And then there's Shaggy. My man contributes absolutely nothing in a fight except for being the decoy. If you're ever being chased by a ghost and need a distraction, Shaggy is your guy. He'll trip over his own feet, scream like someone just took his last slice of pizza, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and let's not forget his secret weapon, hiding behind his dog. Yup, Scooby-Doo, a Great Dane, has more courage in one paw than Shaggy could muster in a lifetime. Remember that time Shaggy faced the Black Knight Ghost, and instead of standing his ground, he opted to disguise himself in a suit of armor? Yeah. That lasted all of about 5 seconds before he fell over and got chased again. I get it, ghosts are scary, but when it comes to a fight, Shaggy couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. Honestly, the only thing Shaggy's good at fighting is hunger, and even then, his biggest weapon is an endless appetite for Scooby snacks. So Shaggy, legendary coward, zero fighting skills, and absolutely no shame in relying on Scooby for every single scare. Let's be real, if running away screaming was an Olympic event, this guy would be covered in more gold than Scooby snacks. But when it comes to fighting, yeah, just keep eating those snacks, my guy. Fighting isn't for you. Next up, we've got Jerry from Tom and Jerry. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jerry's always getting the better of Tom. Isn't he a great fighter? Oh no. No. Let's not get it twisted. Jerry isn't fighting, he's scheming. There's a huge difference between laying traps and actually throwing hands. When it comes to straight up combat, this little mouse would get flattened faster than you can say cheese. Jerry's a smart little dude, no doubt, but when it comes to direct confrontation, he's about as tough as a marshmallow. Every time Tom catches up to him, Jerry's first move is to either scamper away or pull some ridiculous trick out of his tiny mouse-sized toolbox. He'll drop anvils, light firecrackers, or unleash an elaborate Rube Goldberg machine to avoid an actual fight. The second Tom gets up close though, Jerry starts flailing like he's never seen his own arms before. Remember that episode where Tom got super strength from drinking some random concoction and Jerry tried to take him on with a feather duster? Yeah. It didn't go too well for him. Jerry ended up getting punted across the yard like a furry football. His fighting skills pretty much boil down to getting lucky, or using Tom's stupidity against him. Without his endless supply of household objects, or Tom's knack for self-destruction, Jerry would be toast. So, yeah, Jerry's not a fighter. He's a tiny con artist with a PhD in setting traps. The moment he's out of tricks, he's as useful as a chocolate teapot in a sauna. And don't get me wrong, I love watching Tom trip over his own tail while Jerry gets away. But let's not pretend for a second that Jerry could actually fight his way out of anything if his opponent was even remotely competent. Jerry's not a fighter. He's just a mouse with a miracle streak longer than his tail. Next up, we have the Prince of the Fire Nation himself, Zuko. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, Zuko's actually pretty tough. But let's be real, Season 1. Zuko was more of a hot-headed punching bag than a skilled fighter. You ever see someone so determined and yet somehow still so useless in a fight? Zuko spent half of his time yelling about his honor and the other half getting dunked on by a kid who just wanted to have fun. Let's go back to Zuko's early days of chasing Aang. Imagine having all the firebending talent in the world, years of training, and some serious family issues, and still getting beat by a kid who literally had to figure out he could fly using a stick. There's that one moment when Zuko thought he had finally cornered Aang on a ship, but instead of, making a solid plan, he decided to brute force it. He ended up flying off the side of the ship and nearly drowning before having to be rescued by his Uncle Iroh. Props to Uncle Iroh for saving him, but man, the guy really needed to save Zuko from his own ego more than anything. And then there's that time Zuko tried to fight Katara in the Earth Kingdom. Big mistake. He thought a little firebending would get the job done, but nope. Katara schooled him with some waterbending finesse. It's like Zuko forgot that water literally beats fire. It's like rock, paper, scissors. But Zuko just keeps picking scissors every single time, hoping it'll magically work out. By the end of that fight, he's frozen in a block of ice while Katara's just standing there, looking like, "Are you even trying, bro?" Look, Zuko's character arc is one of the best in cartoon history. I'm not denying that. He went from being an angry, confused teenager to actually finding himself. But those early fights? Painful? If you want to see someone take an L with maximum effort, look no further than Zuko. The man had the fire, but no idea how to actually control it. Props to redemption. But Zuko, let's just say there's a reason Aang wasn't scared of you for quite a while. Next on our list, we have Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb.
Is my nose really that pointy?
You know what they say, if you can't fight, invent your way out of it. Well, Doofenshmirtz took that a bit too literally. He's always coming up with these overcomplicated machines, innators for literally everything, and every single one of them ends the same way, failing spectacularly. With Perry the platypus standing over him like, "Really, bro? Again?" Let's start with the Shrinkinator. The plan? Shrink Perry the platypus and take over the tri-state area. Sounds smart, right? Except Perry doesn't even have to do anything to stop him. Doofenshmirtz manages to shrink himself by mistake. The man literally pressed the button on his own machine without even aiming properly. It's like he's in a perpetual slapstick routine that he doesn't even know he's the star of. Another classic moment is when Doofenshmirtz tried to use his lawn gnome Innator to get revenge on his childhood trauma of always being overshadowed by his neighbor's lawn gnome. I mean, can we talk about priorities? The dude's entire evil villain motivation is based on a gnome. Of course, Perry swoops in, uses some basic judo moves, and somehow Doofenshmirtz ends up trapped in his own contraption again. He spends more time explaining his ridiculous backstory to Perry than actually trying to fight. By the time he's done with his monologue, Perry's already taken down the entire machine. Dr. Doofenshmirtz is one of those villains you almost feel bad for. Almost. But let's be real, he's got every possible resource, years of evil science experience, and still can't land a punch. If his machines worked half as well as his monologues, he'd be ruling the world by now. But instead, he's here on this list, proving that sometimes brains aren't enough. You've got to actually be able to follow through. Coming in hot, we've got the man, the myth, the legend of rejection, Johnny Bravo. Johnny thinks he's God's gift to women, and let me tell you, he also thinks he's invincible. But reality check, Johnny. Flexing in the mirror does not count as combat training. You ever see someone who has all the muscles but none of the skills? That's Johnny. This guy's been in more fights than dates, and that's saying something, considering how often he gets turned down. Let's talk about Johnny's so-called fights. It's like every time he's about to impress some lady with his karate moves, it ends with him either getting thrown through a wall or taking a slap so hard it should have its own sound effect library. Remember that episode where Johnny tried to fight a gang of bikers because they were bothering a girl at the diner? Big mistake. Not only did Johnny completely misjudge his own strength, but he ended up getting tossed around like a rag doll. The man has no strategy, just pure ego and a tragic misunderstanding of what real strength is. And then there's that time Johnny tried to fight a monkey. Yes, you heard that right, a monkey. You'd think with all that supposed muscle power, Johnny would come out on top, right? Wrong. The monkey, with zero training and likely a fraction of Johnny's gym time, completely outmaneuvered him. It was like watching a bodybuilder try to swat a fly. Pointless, awkward, and just plain sad. Johnny Bravo is all biceps, no brain, and honestly, even the biceps don't help. The man thinks his way out of fights by flexing and getting hit, as if one day the universe will reward him for his sheer delusion. Let's be real, Johnny. Sometimes fighting involves more than just having big arms, and considering that every woman he tries to impress ends up punching him out, it might be time to rethink the whole macho act.